Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to everyone who is joining us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, either live or sometime in the future. What would it be like if you could get up on stage and pitch confidently? Well, this evening we're going to find out exactly that because we're going to be joined by two of the startups that have been selected for the Fit for Start program. They won that very recently. For those of you who are not in Luxembourg, the Fit for Start program is run by Lux Innovation. We will be having Isabel from Lux Innovation, and we will also be having Simone Latorre, who was the lead coach on last year's Fit for Start program. I'm Philip Grother. I'm going to be your host this evening for this special Test My Pitch event. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this event is designed so that we can listen to different pitches from different startups. This one is a special one because I have had the pleasure of helping these two fine entrepreneurs prepare their pitch. So we're going to be listening to their pitch. But first and foremost, I'm going to bring our jury members in and on board. Good evening, Isabel. Good evening, Simone. How are we doing?
Hello,
Very
Philip.
good. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Fantastic.
inviting us, Philip.
Thank you very much for joining us. So let's start with a short round of introductions. Shall we do ladies first, Isabel? Would you like to start by introducing
Absolutely.
yourself?
Of course. So, hi everyone. My name is Isabel Holguera. I'm a startup advisor at Lux Innovation, and within my role, I was also managing the previous edition of the Fit for Start, edition 13. So it's my pleasure to be here today and try to explain a little bit the in and outs of the program and try to see if we can get a little bit more information about the program. So very excited to be here.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for joining. Simone.
Hello, everyone. I'm Simone Latorre, space engineer by background, but pretty much into the startup world for long. I'm helping startups in raising funds and sort of like perfect their pitch and their value proposition, the strategic value proposition. For the Luxembourg ecosystem in Fit for Start and Lux Innovation, I had the pleasure of being the lead coach of the cohorts for a couple of editions, and I look forward to hearing the startups and who knows, maybe in the future working with the startups.
Absolutely perfect. And also, and it so happens that you were one of the first jury members on the Test My Pitch event. So welcome back to you. So what we're going to do this evening, and as I said, it's a bit of a special one. We're going to listen to the two pitches, and what we'll do afterwards is give them an opportunity not just to pitch, but also to hear from us, understand what it is that they could improve. So they're going to pitch one after the other, obviously, with a presentation. And then afterwards, we're going to come back and all together, we're going to have a round of Q&A for them to understand what they can expect during the Fit for Start program, what you would advise them to do, things that they need to look at or focus on. Because obviously, Simone and Isabel, you have seen the Fit for Start program from the inside. And this is going to be a fantastic opportunity for anybody thinking of joining in the future so that they can actually get prepared. So lessons learned, we've actually got quite a bit of time in front of us, so no time pressure whatsoever. And what I'm going to do is we're going to have Claude on first. So I'm going to bring you, take you off the stream, so we will see you afterwards. So, Claude. Good evening.
Hi, Philip. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Thank you very much for coming. Thanks for playing along. What we're going to do is, first and foremost, share your screen. Obviously, you're going to end up introducing yourself during your pitch as well, so we won't go through a round of introduction. However, do you want to share your screen so that our lovely audience can join in on the fun?
Of course. So you should be able to see it now, hopefully.
And we can. So as I said, we don't have any time constraints this evening. So you can go ahead and pitch. As you heard earlier on, you're going to hear the feedback from our jury members afterwards. I'm going to take myself off the stream and I will see you afterwards. Whenever you're
Right.
ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, in today's software development landscape, applications are no longer built from scratch. Instead, they are assembled from various different software components, much like you would assemble a Lego set out of different Lego bricks. Now, wherever we want to make a fintech application or a health tech application, the way that we put these software components together is going to change. And when you're building such an application, in fact, the majority of the used software components are developed and maintained by third parties. The challenge that software developers then face when using these software components is not knowing if they contain vulnerabilities. And each such vulnerability has the potential to cost the worldwide economy billions, and some of them already have. In 2017, Equifax had to pay a settlement of $650 million as a result of a data breach, which was caused by one such vulnerable third-party software component. Now, another example is the Log4j incident in December 2021, which is it's actually an example of one such vulnerable software component itself. And this vulnerable software component affected approximately 3 billion devices worldwide. Now, as you can see, this problem affects us all because these components are present in all of the software that we all use every single day. QuickClarity solves that problem by giving developers an overview of these software components, identifying and highlighting those vulnerable components amongst them, and also providing patches for those vulnerable components. It does much more than that, and we'll get into that later. Now, the importance of this problem is reflected in the market for cybersecurity, which totals $166 billion today. And the submarket that we are addressing is cyber solutions, which is $78 billion. And to put that into perspective, in Europe, this market is 18.5 billion, and in Belgium, it is 1.5 billion. Now, of course, in a market of this size, we do have competition, which is why we are targeting a specific gap that is not already addressed by others. Current code-related security tools only offer very specific functionalities. And the problem arises, particularly for small SMBs, is that they cannot afford to go out and buy 5 different tools to cover all of their code-related security tasks. And large companies, while they are able to afford this, do not want to have the hassle of setting up and maintaining 5 different tools. So most of the time, they just stick with one tool. And this compromises their security, since not all of their points or flanks are covered. But by combining our open source plan and our plugin system, it allows developers to do all of their code-related security tasks in one tool instead of having to pay for 5. Now, this plugin system is composed of 2 parts. We have analyzers and plugins. And analyzers are larger components, which are built either by us or by the community. And they are assembled from plugins to provide one comprehensive suite of tasks to perform on your code. Now, the plugins, in turn, is where the work actually happens. Same as with analyzers, these can either be built by the community or by us. They can be written in any programming language of choice, so we make it easy for developers to use our tool. And they perform one specific task on the code. And the output is then collected by the analyzers and finally presented to users. Now, this plugin system is supported by our infrastructure and ecosystem of different vulnerability data sources. For example, the National Vulnerability Database of the US government. Now, the data from all of these different sources that are out there can be retrieved in one normalized place, that being our knowledge database. And finally, the output from our tool can be viewed in a web interface, can be queried via an API, but can also be viewed in a command line interface. Now, we're not just presenting an idea here. We have worked on our software for a year and a half at the University of Luxembourg, and we are ready to go to market. CodeClarity is a comprehensive platform that enables you to manage all your projects in one place. You can import your projects from GitHub or GitLab and immediately start an in-depth analysis. It provides important information for all stakeholders in a software development company or any type of company that have software, develop and maintain software. So project managers get an overview of all of the projects handled by their team. They can get an easy to understand summary of all the projects and can track the heritage and also evolution of each project's issues, such as vulnerabilities, but also other kind of issues. Developers get all the gory details. Our platform will provide an overview of all the software dependencies. So these are the software components I was talking about earlier. These are also called dependencies. Identify all of the project open source vulnerabilities and also other issues, and then suggest ways to patch these up. Now, developers can trace why the vulnerability was introduced in the first place, and also what parts of the system this vulnerability affects. Now, the legal team also benefits from our tool. Even though open source has the word open in it, does not mean the software component can be used for any purpose, by any company, or by any individual. Software licenses have very specific permissions, restrictions, and also obligations that the company using the software must adhere to avoid legal and monetary repercussions. And we protect them against exactly those kind of issues. Now, obviously, the cybersecurity team, if a company has any at all, will also greatly benefit from our tool. They can get a quick overview of all the holes in the software and also preventive measures they can put in place to prevent future incidents like this. They get very detailed information on the vulnerabilities and how they can be exploited by a potential attacker and how they can protect themselves against these kind of attacks. Hoppala, my bad. Now, we offer both a cloud-based platform, but we also offer an on-premise plan to install the software in your infrastructure. We do recognize that trusting us with storing and protecting your codes or your IP is a lot to ask, which is why the on-premise solution is the perfect fit for most companies, whereas the cloud platform is meant for individual developers. Using the on-premise solution, no code, no data, and no other personal information will leave your infrastructure. But what impact are we going to have on our users' daily lives? Thanks to CodeClarity, developers will be able to focus their time on value-added tasks and not on finding and fixing bugs made by someone else. But let us quantify this impact by putting it into numbers. Now, assuming that researching pertinent information on a software dependency or software component takes about 5 minutes, and we have on average 742 software components in a single project, then this leads to about 60 hours to create an initial dependency inventory. That is, of course, if you were to do it manually. And let's also assume that looking up and manually processing information on software components from vulnerability databases, that means researching whether a particular software component has a vulnerability, also takes 5 minutes. Then again, we have another 60 hours. Now, considering then an average hourly wage of 37 euros the hour for a software engineer here in Luxembourg, we end up at a total of 4,440 euros. And that is for manually inventorying, checking for vulnerabilities, and also applying patches. But to highlight, this is a single one-time checkup of a single project. And this process obviously needs to be repeated multiple times a month and for every project that the company has, and not just one. So you can imagine the cost that will come together. Now, the security landscape is also changing. There are ongoing discussions at a European level for security to become an obligation and no longer just a nice to have. And in the US, something similar has already been put in place as part of a White House executive order. This executive order requires companies that sell software to the US government to create such a dependency inventory or software component inventory that I was just talking about a minute ago. So now it's time to plan and also anticipate for these kind of legislations and laws by onboarding with us, CodeClarity. Let us make CodeClarity the standard for code-related security tools together. I'm Claude, co-founder of CodeClarity, and together with my colleague, Cedric, we make an excellent team with much expertise in the field. So let us create a better and more secure future with CodeClarity. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So, we're going to bring our jury members back, Duke and Simone. So, who would like to go first? Simone, maybe?
Yes, happy to go first. And Claude, thanks a lot for the presentation. Code Clarity is the name, but the presentation was clear as well, great and clear as well. I will, Philip, I want to ask you something first. Should I go through as a jury member and investor, or should I go through as a Fit for Start coach? Because very different feedbacks will come out.
I think that this evening we have the luxury of being able to do both. So one of the things, obviously, this the floor is yours. Before I start,
I'll try to wear both hats and see where that goes. So Claude, I really like the assertiveness of the story. So the way you conveyed the message, I think, is absolutely clear. I like the initial Lego storytelling to make it as straightforward as possible for people, even with visuals. The size of the problem is clear. The size of the issue that you're trying to solve is clear. And what you do to solve it is clear on paper. Now, in your presentation, we see a market opportunity, the market sizing, effectively. You're starting from 166 billion or something like that.
Yes.
And at Fit for Start, you will be asked to qualify that in a much better way. It's not just numbers on slide. We'll need to understand, and the Fit for Start team will need to understand the assumptions, the proof of claims.
Yes.
Why are we talking about these numbers? How do we go from one to the other? In your case, it seemed like World, Europe, Benelux. This is generally a sort of like analysis that doesn't actually lead you from the top to the sum. The top sum, right? You're not just going from TAM to SOM by reducing the geography. It needs to be also a readiness level, a feasibility, and capabilities of your team to actually capture. So I'm going to give you a bit of feedbacks, and then in between you'll find some questions. I like the fact that you were daring enough to put a competition slide. Nevertheless, the competition slide gives me names, but not their positioning. So I don't know actually how to use that competition slide. It's useful because I get the list of competitors, but I actually don't understand what is your differentiator with respect to those competitors. What's your unique selling point? What are you bringing with respect to them? You raised the flag in the story that I will come back at the end, which is the university project flag, which is an important flag in the startup race. And here I'll wear the more investor type of hat. So when I talk about university project, the first question that an investor would ask you is, okay, what's your cap table? Do you have that equity? Who owns the IP? And this is information that is absolutely critical that you may want to share as well. The concept of debt equity is, I don't know, for example, founders that were working with you or people that were working with you that just own for owning, but that bring any at all value going forward. And that equity is actually a relevant thing to have. When you're dealing with the university STEM project, there is generally a co-ownership of IP. So what's your plan to buy that out? What's your plan to become entirely owners? How does that work? How would it make it function? Because and what is the decision-making authority of not you that are part of the team? Because when I see your slide and I jump onto the team slide, I see two people in there. Does that mean that I'm interfacing exclusively for those two people to convince the totality of the company? Or do I need to convince someone else outside? Because if I need to convince someone else outside, the entire negotiation game changes. What I did not understand also from your presentation is also the monetization strategy. It's not clear how you're going to make money, on which basis do you price your service. Is it a SaaS? Is it a non-SaaS? Is it a custom development? Is it a fully productized solution? Is it software only? Is it don't know. Like it wasn't. It was clear what you're saying, but it's not there are multiple ways of actually making money with something like that. And so you actually be asked to to dig deeper into all of that during the entire Fit for Start process. Specifically, what you will be asked every time you talk about monetization strategy is what's the customer validation in that? So do the customers agree that that's the right price? Do the customers agree that they want actually to pay that? And Fit for Start will ask you to actually provide direct customer evidence of that for every claim you put. What is not stated into your presentation, but generally it's useful to put it on if you're dealing with not just let's say a generic audience, but if you're dealing with possible investors. And for me, as an idea, I would say that every time you're dealing with a live audience that you don't know who is composing that, who's part of that audience, you always need to assume that you're dealing with an external investor, because there may be an investor in that audience. And an investor will want to know, what's your revenue since inception? Is there any or not? Are you pre-revenue or not? What's your projected revenue by the end of a usual year, which is not 2023 in this case because we're almost done, but it's by the end of 2024. What are you projecting? How appealing do I have to be? Are you with respect to an investor? To keep it the long story long, I would continue by saying
you're not going to give me any room. I mean, you are covering all the points.
Although yours are going to be a lot smarter than mine. That's the difference. So I like the impact section of your presentation. I like that it's quantitative. What I didn't see at least is proof of explicit external validation of that quantitative impact. So quantitative impact is something that Static could have done by actually reading the statistics and the numbers. That means that it's clear that you bring value. I personally, as a coach, would want to see whether your customers see that value. And so I want them to tell you and to tell us how much are they actually saving with your solution. Is it true that they notice the same identical quantitative pattern that you are portraying? Love the team slides. It carries credibility, but I need to understand whether that is the full team or not, because you dropped the university statement in there. And the question that is clear, that is important always is, are you both full-time on that or not? And that's all. The rest was great. And I think there is quite a lot to unpack, but the product is very interesting. I can see why you were selected for Fit for Start.
Thank you very much. Great feedback.
Excellent. So we're going to move on to Isabel, who I'm sure you've got a lot of things to say.
I mean, Simone already covered, because I also took some notes, so he already covered some that I was about to say. But thank you, Claude. It was really clear presentation, the storytelling as well, very flowing. You could understand everything. And I could see that you practice as well with Philip. So everything was clear. The tone of voice, the assertiveness, everything super good on top in terms of the pitching. And I also agree with Simone that the examples at the beginning that you portrayed regarding the Lego stories, and also providing the examples as well, create the sense of urgency, and it gives already the big, like, it gives you the idea of how big is this problem. But if I can add something else on top of what Simone already explained super well, it's that, yes, agree on the competition, maybe on a value proposition, maybe you can have like a slides to cover actually what is the value that you are providing right after maybe the competition, like to make it strong. Like to make the strongest statement, like, okay, the competition is doing this, but then on top of that, this is how I'm differentiating from them. Also, the type of maybe also clients, it wasn't clear to me. I understood it's a B2B, but what type of companies, or what is your persona that you are targeting? Is it like really big corporation? Is it SMEs? Is it startups? Like what is your actual, I mean, yes, you want to eventually target all, but you need to start somewhere. So what is actually your idea target persona? So maybe that's something also, maybe together with the pricing, I guess it could be seen as a subscription. So also to then divide per type of companies as well, that subscription or pricing. What else? Regarding the impact section, I don't know, Simon, you can also maybe share your views, but I saw it more as the actual real problem statement, not the impact. So I was like, in terms of the flowing of the story, okay, I got the real big problem, and I understand that you need to introduce it somehow, and the example of the Lego really worked out very well. But then logically, I would expect that to move from let's say competition value proposition to like business model, pricing, team, and so on. But then the impact, I was seeing that more as the actual problem. Like, okay, you are solving time, or you are solving, actually reducing costs to companies. So maybe that to also work it out a little bit more, of bringing that either into the introduction, more into the problem, more like to narrow it down, and then actually in the impact section to have more feedback of actual customers or people that actually like have tested the solution or proved the solution, and can actually give you or validate that impact that you will have. Then of course, like,
I can actually add directly to the impact thing, so that then you continue. You're right. The way the impact thing was presented, it was out of place. But in fact, it would have been in the right place if it was continuing with the monetization strategies and the pricing. Like if you're keeping the impact where it is right now, but you're not just leaving to just what is the impact, but is the value assessment to make a value-based pricing and then explain the pricing, then I can sort of like see it in that position. Because that monetization part was not covered, the monetization strategies and pricing, then I completely concur, Isa. It becomes a problem statement. It doesn't become like an analysis for pricing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah.
But then again, like for me, pitching and having like a general slide overview to cover all the type of audience is very difficult, and I like the idea of what Simone was saying, that also always try to think that there would be an investor in the room. And in fact, what I was also missing was the typical traction slide of what you have accomplished so far, where you stand at the moment, kind of like, I don't know if you are part of the university or some awards that you've won or something to give that, okay, that I'm here and this is what I've achieved so far, but to give you already that kind of credibility. Something missing as well, the business model, the pricing as well, but that Simone already mentioned it. Some financial figures as well. And I always like to see at the beginning, maybe I didn't catch it, but I'm pro of whenever you are having the introduction, just to state your name, say, okay, I'm Claude and I'm the founder of Code Clarity. There are people that they don't like that, but I prefer to say it at the beginning because I would remember your name and I would know, okay, he's the founder of this startup, so I know that he's talking about the mission and vision and so on. If it's more like a CTO, I will be like, okay, he's going to be more technical, but I always like to see that. And I think that you didn't introduce yourself at the beginning, and just at the end, I always like, I mean, depends of course of the configuration and so on, but to have a Q&A last slide or a thank you slide with your name or with some call to action. Always try to elaborate every moment, or to say, okay, I want to discuss about this later on, if I'm looking for certain people or partners. So always try to put that somewhere in your pitch. But maybe this we will discuss later on. But for the Fit for a Start program, for each, let's say, steering committee and pitch that you have to, of course, perform and explain, you have much more, let's say, zoom out or set of certain topics or sub areas of a pitch. So But overall, congrats. I think you did a great job. And with the Fit for a Start program, that pitch and that slide will be perfect afterwards, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you very much.
Very good. Excellent. So in terms of timing, what we're going to do now, because there is still quite a lot to say, what we're going to do now is switch over to Angelica. And then what we're going to do afterwards is, once we've gone through the Q&A, the Q&A session, we're going to come and talk. You mentioned the steering committee, you mentioned Fit for Start. So I'm going to bring Duke. There we go. And Claude, we're going to see you afterwards. And Angelica.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
You're going to be up next, so we're going to take your screen, and it's going to be the same deal.
Yeah, just let me know. Can you see my...
It is coming up. You just want to share your presentation.
Can you see it now?
So this is what we can see. We can see the other screen. Duke.
Okay.
So for our viewers, I have just unshared your screen.
Yeah, apparently
So
I
bring your
cannot select. It was there before, and now I cannot see my...
It's all right. Take your time.
So I share the screen, and then it should be visible my other... It was here before.
It worked earlier on.
Yeah.
During the technical rehearsal, whilst we were all getting everything set up, it was working.
So
Other screen?
again...
I wonder why. So at the moment, we are... No, you've unshared it.
So wait, it's I click present and then share screen, right? The same as last time?
Yep, same as earlier on.
Yeah, and then I click window. Oh yeah, now I see it.
Now you see it.
Yeah. And
there we go. This is the beauty of being live. There we go. Wonderful. Excellent. So I will have feedback for both of you later on. And essentially, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Philip. So as you said, I'm Angelica. I'm from ERDLab. ERDLab is providing digital fabrication from sustainable materials for construction purposes. And one of our products is a brick. And this brick is the future of construction. And it was 3D printed using locally sourced soil. And it's going to solve one of the biggest issues in Luxembourg and one of the biggest polluters in Luxembourg. According to the EU emission trading scheme, by 2036, all the cement and concrete industry in Luxembourg need to reduce their CO2 emission by 64% in Luxembourg. And if they do not, they need to pay up to 80% of the revenues in fines. So as you can imagine, they are looking for solutions. In parallel, Luxembourg's Directorate for Defense is launching a call for dual-use technologies for green defense. And we are already in the conversation with them to provide our digital fabrication expertise. I'm Angelica. I'm the founder of ERDLab. I'm an architect specialized in 3D printing. And my colleague Jen is a robotic genius from South Korea, and he specializes in parametric design. The key challenge to any innovation in construction industry is certification, so that the industry can trust and use a product or solution for construction process. We know it from experience because we are based in the NeoBuild Innovation Center. and that's basically the Luxembourg's Construction Training and Certification Center. So we are very happy to be supported by IFSB and SEDEC. And as you can imagine, we are already having our materials tested and certified. The idea, the whole path started with the simple idea that we can make construction just a bit more sustainable. And on the way, we realized that we are in the right place with the right people and the right time. We recently won a Circular by Design challenge for our 3D printed clay urban furniture. Yeah, that was in June this year. I need to say EdLab is uniquely positioned to succeed where so many have failed to succeed in this highly innovative industry, because we are marrying technology to the real needs of this traditional industry. And another challenges in the construction sector are material shortage, CO2 emissions, aging workforce, slowly adapted innovation, massive labor shortage, safety issues, and stagnant productivity level. You might not believe it, but we solve all these issues with 3D printing. And we don't even need to keep our feet on the ground. We have an ongoing project with the university, with SNT from the University of Luxembourg, to combine drones, autonomous drones, with 3D printing. So you remember that call from Luxembourg's Directorate of Defense I told you about. We are going to 3D print clay shelters for civilians and soldiers in the war zones and areas that were affected by natural disasters such as earthquake. So as you can see, there's a lot going on. That's my job as an architect, to stay organized and to keep the deadlines. We have existing contracts. We started with 3D printing mags. Now we are 3D printing bricks, and soon we'll be 3D printing houses. So we know that we are a very strong technical team, but at the same time, we know that we can use some help with turning our small business into an international venture. That's why we would love to, and we wanted to get into Fit for Start, to benefit from the guidance when it comes to business and scaling, because this help will shorten our learning curve and help Luxembourg to become a leader in sustainable construction and an example to follow. I would love to stay in touch with you, so feel free to join me on LinkedIn, and I'm very curious for your feedback, for your comments, and then for the Fit for Start program. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to bring our jury members back. And this time, we're going to start with Isabelle. just to keep airtime a bit fair.
Yes, of course. I was doing out the key elements, so now then Simone will not have anything else to say. No,
Simone will always have something to say.
Yes, I know. No, but thank you so much, Angelica. And I will start by saying that in the Fit for Start program, you will have to pitch in person, so you will not have the issue of like switching the live or technical issues. Maybe the clicker will not work, but at least you know that in the Fit for Start program, you all the time will pitch in person. So that's also good. It will come with other problems as well, but not regarding digital. So overall, great pitch. I was super engaged on the story. I was really following everything. Everything was super clear. The way I connect with you, honestly, so everything was super clear. How you were also explaining and pausing, and with the intonation as well. So on that, I have to say congrats. In terms of the pitching structure per se, a couple of things. I understood the big problem, and I understood that you also mentioned that there are material shortage, aging workflows, all these things that you are solving with the 3D printing. But I guess if you are substituting, workers and using technology, then the technology will also maybe create some risk or some problems. So to also cover that somehow in the pitch. I love the fact of what you did about exposing a problem and exposing a regulation or like something that the construction sector has to somehow comply. So that means that your solution or solutions like this will be needed in the near future. So that is good because that kind of gives you already like a potential demand for your solution. But that could also imply that other early startups or other companies will also jump into the problem and into these needs. So that is also something to be mindful and to say about competition. And I don't think you cover the competition landscape part. So I will also try to integrate it somehow. Maybe there is nothing done in Luxembourg, or maybe not. You cannot find maybe direct competition, but maybe indirect competition. Or if you really want to, not only focus on Luxembourg, because also that I found your pitch very Luxembourgese focus, which is good. It's very good for the Fit for a Start program, absolutely. But if you really dream high and you really want to conquer the world, you also need to somehow explain or portray that you don't want to be seen as a Luxembourgese company for Luxembourgese market. You want to also reach out different markets. So for that also to consider competition. The market slide as well wasn't there, so I don't know exactly how big the market is and how much are we talking about, how much you want to penetrate, do you much want to conquer, and so on. So that's something also to include, I guess, in a general, let's say, pitch deck. What else I put here? The team is like, well, the visuals, I love the visuals and how you design the slides. I can clearly see that you are an architect and that you are good at design. But also a question that I had when I was listening to your pitch was, okay, 3D printing, is he the owner of the technology? Is he having the machinery, or if he's like purchasing it from someone else, or about the solution per se or the IP? Like, are you protecting as well the design of the bricks or your solution, or also maybe that you can put it as a strong point if you really have those designs and so on, if they are maybe protected, to also showcase that, okay, it's not something that someone else that has the expertise knowledge can come and just re-engineer and copy, just purchasing a 3D printer and that's it. So to showcase that. And then traction. So you saw the Circular by Design challenge. That's really nice prize. And we are also dealing with that at Lux Innovation. But also, if you're already testing this with clients, if you already started working on some projects, that's also what your audience would like to know. And then same comments as before, business plan, pricing model, figures, estimates. That's also something that is missing. But I mean, it's a general pitch deck. We said it before, but that's also something that maybe would be nice to see.
Yes, definitely.
But congrats, Angelica.
Thank you, Isabel. Yes, definitely. I just want to say that you're definitely right. So these things all the topics will be covered for my bigger pitch. And anyway, I need to do it this week actually, because we have another.
And don't worry, I mean, you have 6 months to
There is another competition soon, so I will have more time actually. So anyway, these topics will be covered. Thank you.
Very good. Simone,
since Isa covered a lot of things, I will go completely in another direction. So Angelica, thanks a lot for the presentation. You got the right attitude. The slides are great. For me, the flow did not flow of this presentation. In fact, for me, the story was not clear because you started with one slide that I think it just said the future of construction. When you're and this is another trick, when you're sharing the screen and you start with one slide that says something, you need to make sure that slide changes as fast as possible. Otherwise, people believe that the presentation is frozen. Well, you said a lot of things before you moved to the first slide. And your first slide was the future of construction, but then you started talking about the brick. So then in my mind, I already wrote down, okay, brick is the future of construction. Our brick is the future of construction. And then you started going with other products. And then I started thinking, okay, what is actually the point of common denominator of these products? And maybe it's the clay. So then maybe that immediate slide, the first slide should not be the future of construction, but it should be AirLab is a 3D printed clay construction company. Sounds 3D printing clay, like tell me what you are so that I don't need to guess, because you are not a one product company. You are presenting a lot of things. When you talk about bricks, what would come to mind to me is immediately, okay, how much does your brick cost with respect to a normal brick? When you talk about shelters in clay, immediately it comes to me like, what's the cost of your shelter versus a container shelter that is deposited with helicopter or trucks? What I really like in the flow that overall, in my opinion, did not really connect with me is actually the fact that you had the guts of putting the team slide very early on. It's a very difficult thing to do. In most occasions, the team slide very early on looks a lot out of place. In your case, it makes sense. It was flowing that moment that you're like, okay, there is me, and then there is this other person. Genius there. Great. What I think it came too soon in the flow is the certification part. I love that it's there because it exposes the problem. And it exposes one challenge that you will need to deal with, you and any other competitor will need to deal with. But it comes too soon. And when I say it comes too soon, with respect to what? With respect to the fact that I did not understand at that point yet what the heck was your product. So is it a brick? Is it furniture? Then it became shelters for defense. And then it's overall construction with the timeline. So the certification is for what? Is the certification for the material, the certification for the shape, is the certification for the technology manufacturing process? So I think it came a bit too soon. I actually like a lot that you are a company that has a clear timeline already in mind. And I understood over the presentation that the brick is not the product. The brick is a milestone it's a demonstration milestone. Now, is it actually a product? But I don't know. Like, are you actually going to sell 3D printed bricks?
Yes, but as the certification takes a few years, around 5 years, I have the other products like furniture, which can be, which I can sell in the meantime. I mentioned the competition because actually the client for my furniture, the first clients will be Ministry of Economy and the Luga event, which will be in Luxembourg.
Furniture, as that is aesthetics, you don't need certification. There is no structural needs on furniture, basically. It's a table.
Yes, tests, but not a long process certification, yes.
Okay, so would it make sense to actually explain that in a timeline, as you just explained to me? Like, we want to get to bricks
like the history, right?
Bricks. But
like
since
history.
That takes 5 years, since today, we're not going to be asking investors or anyone in the audience following our journey to wait for 5 years for the regulatory part. We're going to be starting by releasing something that requires a much easier certification step that you can already purchase on our website today, which is clay furnitures. And we're going to do that for the next X years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whenever it is. As the certification is done and we have no doubt on getting the certification, it just takes time, or we have doubt in taking the certifications, as soon as we get it, we're going to start with the commercialization of bricks. And then later on, the following step is going to be the commercialization of the direct 3D printing of clay houses. Is there a different certification process for the houses, or is the same?
Yes. No, I think it's much longer.
So here's
So-
my point. The certification trigger, the challenge that you were so kind in sharing, you shared it too soon. So I don't know what that's related to. And I don't know how that affects your timeline. And but I think overall it's great. I think there is a great story to tell. I just think that since you have furnitures that need a light touch certification, but then you have brick that needs a certification, military stuff that needs another type of approval at least, and then the 3D printing of houses that has another certification process, arranging all of that in a timeline and saying, and that's the reason why we start today with furnitures. Like put the timeline of bricks, shelters, houses, but then say, obviously, the shortest time to market here is 5 years. Are we going to be waiting for 5 years? No, it's furniture time, baby. You see, that's the process of whoever is listening to you. So I would share the same question that Isa said about your IP. It is absolutely important, especially in a multi-product strategy. I need to understand what are you actually protecting. Is it 3D printing technology for clay in Europe? Is a specific clay mixture that you are using for 3D printing? Is it the brick shape? Is it the furniture shape? Because 3D printing, the technology IPing or protecting the technology gives a certain serious barrier to entry for against your competitors. While trademarking the look of a furniture piece, it gives zero barrier to entry because you just design another furniture piece that looks something else, that looks in a different place, in a different way. And since you're going to go on the brick commercialization, I will be interested to ask you, hopefully I'll have the chance during Fit for Start, but you never know, that decides, Isa will decide that. If the bricks that you're planning to do are, in addition of being greener, are they actually comparable in terms of cost? They don't need to be cheaper, but the beauty and non-beauty and challenge, let's say, of the construction company is that a lot of green solutions were brought as alternative to bricks. They were all discarded because they were 1 cent more expensive than the standard clay brick each. So how do you make it at least, at max, let's say at most, as expensive as a clay brick? And that is an interesting thing because 3D printing carries some cost complexity because it's great for speed, it's great for on-site, but it's bad for scale production in general with respect to typical manufacturing. Maybe you have the solution to that, and I'm super into that. Again, in a more generic pitch, I would be asking you, what were your investments to date? What's your revenue? What's your monetization? What's your go-to-market strategy? You were very Luxembourg focused. I don't dislike it at all. Perhaps you were a bit too much Luxembourg focused, because what I've noticed in the past years is that the companies that are the most Luxembourg focused ends up being the least investable, because of the scale. It's automatically projected to be smaller. So you have to be Luxembourg centric. You have to be Luxembourg focused. You have to use Luxembourg as a launch pad to sort of like understand your product. But as soon as possible, you need to make me understand in your presentation that you care about conquering the world. Because conquering Luxembourg alone makes it a great company for you, but a terrible company for an investor. Because the scale is not sufficient to give any return that an investor would care about.
I see.
But for the rest, I think Isa covered everything. It takes guts to actually go online and sharing a presentation. This is both for you and for Claude from Code Clarity. It takes guts to do that. I am very happy that you were selected for Fit for Start. I think that you're the right canvas to work on throughout the program, and the project that you are launching is amazing. So very happy to see how it goes.
Maybe one last remark, because when you were saying, Simon, about the differentiation between the normal brick versus the clay, maybe one slide that you can actually, put the characteristic of the normal brick versus what you're bringing.
Yeah.
So people can understand, okay, I mean, it's pretty much the same, also robust or like durable over time or whatever characteristic. I'm not really an expert on that, but like to showcase, okay, I'm just kind of like meeting all the characteristic, but on top of that, it's more sustainable the way it's produced. There is less CEO involved, but that could also give a better understanding on what Simone was saying. So yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. And just, I don't know if I can have like 5 seconds, but thank you so much for the feedback, because obviously at the Fit for Start, we just had like very short feedback from the jury members when we had the opportunity to just like catch them. So thank you so much. I'm looking forward. I know it's like Fit for Start is not a nice social club, although sometimes it is as well, but I know it's a hard work. So I'm looking forward, to really to make my company serious and scalable. So can't wait to start, and I know I will meet Isabel, but I hope I can meet Simona as well. So thanks again.
Don't leave us just yet. We're going to have a group conversation. So, as Simone says, it does take guts, and you two have risen to the challenge. I very much enjoyed listening to you both. Claude, you changed and you went down the slightly more technical route. Of course, as the audience will have understood, these were essentially the pitches that got both of these teams selected for the Fit for Start program, and highlighting on something that Simone said, and this is for our audience in general. When you're preparing a pitch, it's important to understand what you're pitching, who you're pitching to, right? So selecting your audience. In this particular case, joining the Fit for Start program, and this is why one of the explanations behind why it was so Luxembourg-centric is because in the Fit for Start program, the jury and selection committee, they want to make sure that this is going to have an impact on Luxembourg. So that's already point number one for anybody thinking of joining in the future. A tip number one is going to be make sure that there is some kind of impact on Luxembourg. Now, as you mentioned, Simone, during the Fit for Start program, of course, making it scalable and making sure that there is a real worldwide go-to-market strategy. How do we conquer the world? How do you achieve world domination? That then becomes what makes your company investable. So there's the pitch to get into the Fit for Start program, and then there's how you grow the company during the Fit for Start program moving forwards. Claude, coming back, because we moved on to Angelica, and I didn't give you any feedback earlier on. When you are going to go for a slightly more technical presentation, and you mentioned just before the presentation that you were aiming at sort of the CTO, if you do have somebody in mind, it actually helps quite a bit when you come to a relatively technical part to say, this is what life looks like for the CTO. So for the person who is going to be most interested in this particular part. And this actually applies to all pitches when you're starting to talk about something very specific. You can say the CTO is going to be interested in this, the CMO, the CEO, et cetera, and you can really divide it up by persona. And so that's point number one. Point number two, of course, when you're looking at the different business models, because in the case of Angelica, for example, there are multiple products. That's something obviously that is going to evolve over time. So maybe what we can do on the next iteration, and thank you very much for that suggestion, Simone, of making it very clear that there are going to be these different milestones that we need to address. So that's going to be interesting as well. Maybe we can start the open Q&A session about the Fit for Start program. So first and foremost, Angelica and Claude, do you guys have any questions about something that was maybe said by Isa and Simone, something that you would like to scratch a bit more on either for the pitch or for the Fit for Start program?
Yeah, I have a question. It's more general, but it would still apply to, I guess, generically. Okay, so Simone actually, he hit the correct spot. He talked about who owns the IP. Because we are from the university, we have worked on this while we were working on university time. So that's obviously a great question, and one that will be asked 100%. So yeah, one general question that we had as co-founders of this company is that, as an investor, would you invest in a company that has to either give equity or pay like a licensing fee for an IP that they do not necessarily own? So, or would you rather invest in companies that have the IP, which is theirs then? So that's more of a general question.
I can actually try to answer, because I had this debate multiple times with a lot of startups. It is very useful to come out as a university startup, first of all. But any university spin-off, let's call it like that, even though not necessarily a spin-off, but any university spin-off should work very early on to put a cap to how much that license is to be acquired. Because there is not a single investor in the world that will ever acquire a company with an open-ended royalty to someone else. It's impossible. It's impossible. There are a lot of people that are trying to make that happen, and we're talking about consultants that are even trying to help universities around the world to spin off companies. And there was not found a single investor that was interested in this conversation. So there is no problem if, and the university is no different from any other like royalty creditor with respect to you, right? So the university is very useful because right now the university is bigger than you. So nurture that relationship. Right now you are benefiting from the position of the university, from the presence of the university. The rubber stamps of the university is very useful. But that rubber stamp, and here I'm talking as a negotiator, that rubber stamp has a price and a value. Qualify what is that price and put that cap on how much you have to pay back to the university. Because you can use multipliers, you can use whatever you want, but I would not want to enter in an open-ended royalty discussion or license discussion with a third party. And sometimes that third party can decide, and doesn't necessarily mean that this is the University of Luxembourg. I'm making it generic. So sometimes that third party may have also the veto right on deciding of how the technology is used, and also on where that technology is sold and the price of that technology once it gets sold. When that veto right makes it into the license agreement or into the IP agreement, the company is dead. It's dead. It's immediately dead. I can guarantee that. You're never going to be able to raise funds with those scenarios. We've had some of those situations in Fit for Start. I encountered also some other situations outside Fit for Start. And we always had to sort of like push both the university, not necessarily the Luxembourg University, but a university, and the startups to say, hey, sort this out. There is no problem in recognizing that a university or any other external entity needs to be paid. There is no problem in recognizing that because the university gives you a value. The university gave you the research way to get with this product on the market. So that has to be respected, and to a certain extent, it has to be paid. But the university and a company have complete different perspectives, and have complete different growth ambitions, and have complete different capability of following that growth ambition. So do you want to ask permission to the university once you are at Series B investment and someone is saying, hey, you need to raise right now 70 million or I will just acquire you for 600 million? do you actually want to ask for permission to someone else to if you make that transaction or not? I wouldn't. And so your question is how you would do it as an investor. Personally, as an investor, whenever IP is co-owned by someone, I just write it off. It doesn't matter how complicated it is, like immediately written off. But there are investors that at least are much better than me. I'm not really the angel investor. There are more angel investors that will come to you and tell you, okay, let's try to sort this out. What would be the maximum that we have to pay? Let's try to define a deal. I'm more that type of person that says, once that deal is sorted out, come to me back. But this is not a conversation that is interesting in this moment in time for me.
Okay.
How do you see
and
it?
maybe if I can add to that, what Simone said, I've been also involved in some EAC projects, that the EAC program is, accelerator program is more at the European level. And I've seen a couple of cases where there were some spin-off that were trying to raise money as well, and that the license or the IP was owned by the university. And some of them went through, but it's what Simone mentioned, that you need to find an investor that is willing to accept those terms. But of course, an investment at the end of the day is an investment, and you need to de-risk it the maximum possible. And not owning the IP, it's been seen as a red flag. So it's a matter, for me, it's more a matter of your strategy. Not all the startups needs to go crazy and fundraise crazy amounts in order to be sustainable over time. But if that is your road, then definitely you need to check that out as soon as possible, or at least to know when you will get that ownership of the IP.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Angelica,
Yeah.
did you have a question about the feedback that you got?
I think I would have a question more about Fit for Start, if possible.
Yes, this is absolutely the stage.
So, because as we know, there are different steering committees that you have to pass as a startup. So my question would be: is it like each of them? It's about more focused on different part of the activity, and is the steering committee judging the progress made during Fit for Start, or more like how do you see, how is the plan for the company or is just simply the progress you made within the program?
So I think I can take that one, and maybe just to clarify a little bit about these steering committees and what is that. So also for the listeners, so the Fit for Start program is an acceleration program that is managed by us, Lux Innovation, and it lasts 6 months normally. So how we do it from the beginning to the end is that the purpose of the goal is that the Fit for Start startups, when they enter, they are challenged on certain areas of the business, and they are challenged by jury members, and they are supported by coaches. So for instance, Simone was the lead coach of the previous edition. So how we measure all of that, it's via the steering committee. So approximately every month and a half, the startups will have to be pitch in front of these jury members. So 4 times within these 6 months. So in each time in this steering committee, the startup will normally pitch 10 minutes normally, and then they will receive or they'll have 10 minutes Q&A, where then the jury members will ask questions to clarify certain things. But in each steering committee, there are certain clear KPIs that the companies or the startups need to present. So when I was also saying at the beginning is that we really zoom out certain key aspects of the pitch deck or of the business. So in each steering committee, we are focusing on a certain KPIs, and then the jury members will assess or will try to clarify or ask questions to the startups based on those KPIs. It really depends on the vertical that you are in. In this case, we are here, I think both of you are in the digital venture, but of course that depends, and it will be completely different, for instance, regarding the health tech venture or the space venture, because, health tech has also a lot of regulatory aspects to cover. So the KPIs will be different, and in each edition also varies based on, previous feedback on what it works or what not. But normally the structure is a little bit the same. So for the first steering committee, let's say you will expect to touch more generic KPIs, problem solution, value proposition, team. That's normally at the beginning. Then it goes more towards the business part of market, competition, traction, and so on. Third one is more about financials, also some specific topics as well, sustainability, cybersecurity, and then the last one will be the final steering committee, where the juries will decide based on the progress and based on, if they give you a green light or yellow or like red flag, then they will graduate you or not. And I've seen based on the last edition, for instance, if something wasn't really covered, or like you received some feedback or input regarding the KPIs, let's say, of a steering committee one. So then I know, for instance, Simone worked on that, and then they were presenting or taking a few slots in the next pitching or steering committee to clarify, okay, we understood this feedback, we understood this KPI, and this is what we've done in order to, continue and progress. But that's the idea, that each steering committee is showing specific progress, and that the coach is also helping you to get to that point. Simone, I don't know if you want to add something.
No, it was perfect. Perhaps to give it even, I'll try to give it even more generic and structured, even for the audience. It's like the Fit for Start is basically split in 4 seasons, in 4 moments. Each of these seasons end with the steering committee. So the moment in which you speak in front of the jury and you're assessed on specific KPIs of that season, as Isa was saying. So how does each period of these 4 work? You start with a coaching session. The coaching session explains to you what you're expected to deliver by the end of the phase. Then after a couple of weeks, you end up with another coaching session to check how you are doing, how is it working. And the coaching sessions are not just us listening to you. They can be rather transformative. Like we ended up changing more than half of the startups we've sort of like that entered into Fit for Start. They end up with a different business model by the second steering committee, and they just change everything. So, and this is also because Lux Innovation is very careful in picking coaches that have actually done that journey already. We've seen it happening. We work constantly with startups. We have no problem in telling you, sorry, what you're doing here makes no sense for this specific KPI. There is a problem. Let's fix it. And if fixing that means changing completely your company strategy, we'll change completely your company strategy. And you will tell us whether you agree or not. Then, of course, you're in control of deciding how you want to evolve it. But we're going to sort of like helping you find the next move in a way that is the most coherent with your previous move and with your final end goal. Okay, so there is a coaching session. This coaching session is long, but it's very thorough. And specifically in the first coaching session, as Isa was saying, we're going to walk you through the various KPIs of that specific, let's call it season period of the first steering committee. But we have done many times a lot of adjustments to these KPIs. Now, this is because Fit for Start selects 10 startups, let's say, in the digital stream. All of these 10 startups are not starting from the same place. Some of them are pre-revenue, some others are post-revenue, some of them own the IP, some others don't own the IP. So there is quite a lot that the coaches will then discuss with you as a startup by saying, hey, I actually don't think that you need to show us this KPI. Let's explain to the jury in 1 second at the steering committee why we don't believe that you need to dig into this KPI, but instead let's anticipate the KPI from the third steerco right now, because that's what your company needs right now to understand. So the advantage of having coaches that are following your startup throughout the journey is that we are the ones that make sure that you don't stop looking at the big picture at any given time. Because Lux Innovation, and specifically Fit for Start, is, to my experience, the most amazing startup acceleration program that exists. Now, some people take it as if it's homework to be done by the end of the day. Those people are wasting their time, and they're wasting our time. And generally will happen that those people will not graduate, because we'll notice that very early on. And I can also give you an information. Out of 10 startups that come in, typically 6 or 7 make it out. So 3 or 4 startups don't make it after the last. I mean, they make it alive, obviously, but not as a graduated company. And this is important to know. Like, if you're coming in to have the rubber stamp of Luxembourg, to do the minimum homework and all of that, the minimum homework for the jury will not be sufficient. And if the jury wanted to be sufficient, for the coaches, it will not be sufficient. We need to really feel, because we're going to invest a lot of time, a lot of resources of Luxembourg onto the growth of your startup. This is the greatness of Fit for Start. If we see that our taxpayer money is being wasted by someone that just wants to do the homework, we're going to check out on that startup. We're going to notify the jury and just literally just say, there is nothing, that this startup is not listening. They should not continue. I also want to tell you how Isa explained it very well, actually. After any steering committee, apart from the last one, which is the graduation one, the jury will give you a feedback. And this feedback can be in words, in colors, in numbers, doesn't matter. Well, each edition decides, basically, Fit for Start. Lux Innovation will decide this time as well. But the point is that the feedback that the jury gives you is not a feedback for good to know. It's a feedback that gives you additional homework on the following steering committee period. So the baseline homework at each steering committee period are the KPIs of that steering committee. Then the jury adds homework on top of that, if something was not clear from previous steerco. Then the coaches add complexity, if we feel that you need to dig deeper than what you have done until now. And this typically happens for like the customer discovery journey phase, in which coaches would often tell you, great, you're telling us that the customer care about this. Show us 200 emails that confirm this. So this is the whole point. Like, we want the reality of the market to speak. A startup that makes it out of Fit for Start should be a startup that knows where to find its customers, knows how to price its product, can evolve over time, of course. So we had a lot of startups that graduated on a specific item, and by now they're doing something else on top of that item. So it's not the life or death of a startup, but I think it's critical to understand that we take startups that are fit for start, but we want to spit out startups that are good to scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There'll be actually, it's I don't know if this is public information yet, but maybe Lux Innovation will end up telling us a bit more about an upcoming program.
It's public. It's public. You can say about it.
Very good.
But we're working on it. We're working on it. Yeah.
Exactly. So for the audience, and building on what Simone has just said, Fit for Start, and then there's going to be Fit for Scale. Whether that is the name of it later on, we don't know yet. Maybe also for the audience, we need to talk a bit about the funding, because this is something that kind of slips under the radar from time to time, and that always comes up as a question, how the funding works. Because Simone, you mentioned this is taxpayer money, and this is why it is taken so seriously by all of us. So now that the startups have been selected, that automatically entitles them to €50,000 grant. And then when they graduate, only when they graduate, and they raise 50,000, then they're entitled to another 100,000 euros. But obviously that's contingent on actually graduating. And as Simone just said, that is not a guaranteed. And then they have to raise themselves at least 50,000 euros to unlock the 100,000 euros. Now, in terms of the organization,
let me actually
please,
add
carry on.
something here, because there is an important thing to understand. Historically, 60 to 70% of the startups have graduated. There is nothing that Lux Innovation does to enforce that number. Like, we would be extremely happy if 100% of the startups graduate.
I was about to say that.
There is
Exactly.
no
Like,
budget
that's our
limit.
goal. 10 out of 10 or 20 out of 10. That's actually our job every day, to really try to help the startups get graduated. But
the Luxembourg government doesn't come in with a budget cap. If 10 startups are selected, that means that the funds for 10 startups are allocated, and more for everyone that collaborates around them. So we need to respect the taxpayer money. At the same time, the taxpayer money is allocated for this project. So it's entirely up to you whether you're going to get them or not. And historically, we've seen that 60 to 70% of the startups were capable of making it out of the funnel of the Fit for Start journey. But neither the coaches, nor the jury, nor Lux Innovation have any interest in killing 3 startups, for example, because otherwise we run out of money. This is not the problem of Fit for Start in Luxembourg.
No. certainly not the objective, and thank you very much for pointing that out. Another way of looking at these steering committees, and this is obviously Fit for Start, relatively young, relatively small companies, pre or post revenue. Another way of looking at these steering committees, it's as if you were having a board meeting. And from experience, when I was a coach, was it on cohort 8? The way that we designed those. So just bearing in mind that the steering committees, the jury members are always the same. So that was the case when I was a coach. That is still the case. Okay. So essentially these these jury members, they come from the industry. So these are generally going to be CEOs and company leaders. Has that jury already been selected, or is that still in progress?
It's been selected, and it was already the one that were already in the Fit for Start competition at the Luxembourg Venture Day. So they are the same, and they will accompany the startups throughout the entire program. So if, especially in the case of digital, that we have a little bit more startups than in the other verticals, you will be allocated in 2 slots. So for the morning, let's say, a slot, you will get the same jury members since day 1 until the graduation day, and the same for the afternoon slots. So just to add to what you were saying on the type of profile, I mean, you already know them, but maybe for the audience, it's not only serial entrepreneurs or CEO of companies. There are also investors that are part of the jury members, and also industry experts, especially, to check on certain sectors or certain technologies. So we always try to get that people on board that they can also check and, challenge on the technology aspect. So it's a little bit of the perfect, let's say, combination. So industry expertise, experience or managerial skills, and then the investment space or perspective. So to pull that together, and that's kind of the perfect jury member. And maybe to add to what Simone was saying before about the willingness of Lux Innovation and all the stakeholders involved of graduating everyone. And as Simone was saying before, what I've seen and experienced this in managing this digital track was that startups sometimes were kind of bugged or and knowing that they were, having to work so much on the program. And it's a little bit even unfair, like you really need to understand where you are getting into, and sometimes, and back to the question, or the thing that you were saying before about the money, Philip, like sometimes even they think that they will get the 150K just on day one, and they don't really understand that this is a matter of checking the progress, checking your commitment to the program, checking that you are really working, that you are listening to your coaches. And this is something that I've also witnessed. And at the beginning, especially, you need to build this trust with the coach, and because you will hear some feedback that maybe you are not completely agree, and you need to work on it. So maybe you will feel a little bit defensive at the beginning, but we are all here, and this is a message that I've been trying to pass on the startups, and I know the coaches as well, everyone that is involved, is that we really want the startup to succeed and grow. And we are just here to help you and accelerate that growth, and pinpoint or identify those issues that you need to work on. And we are doing this because we really believe in you. So for those that don't graduate, it's not that we have something personal against them. That no, it's just simply sometimes it's difficult to coach certain people because they are so fixed on their idea, or on their business plan, or they convictions, that no matter, like, there is no way that we can really communicate sometimes. So as a suggestion to you guys, and to all the participants as well, is to really start open and building that trust relationship from day one with the coach, because they are your allies. They will try to help you 100% to get through the program. Also, the Lux Innovation team is there to hear you, to help you. And I would love next year to have that 10 or 20 out of 20 graduated. But also, as Simone mentioned, it's taxpayer money, or is money that is public money. So we expect a commitment from the startup, from all sides, jury, coaches, Lux Innovation stakeholders. And if we don't see that, you are just doing the minimum, just like updating some slides and that's it, it's not going to work. So if you really put yourself in there and believe in the process, and open yourself to coaches, for sure that will be appreciated by the jury members, and eventually will end in a happy ending story.
Very, very good. So we have bombarded you both with a ton of information. So maybe Angelica and Claude, maybe you've got some questions for us.
Well, difficult right now.
a lot to process. No worries. I'm not going to put you on the stand. No worries at all.
I have a question, if I may.
Of course, this is what we're here for.
Right. So we go through these seasons, I think you call them, these 4 seasons where we have these coaching sessions, and then we do a pitch again with addressing those KPIs that were mentioned and whatnot. So I have a question about this exact pitch. Is this more of so we present it, but is this afterwards like an open discussion, or is it more like, hey, this is what we need to see, this is what you need to work on, or is it just like a bit of feedback, or is it more like open discussion type style? That's basically it.
How we did it this edition, and this is an evolving type of things based on what it works and what we want the startup to actually benefit. But normally it's kind of like an exam. So it's like pitching, Q&A, and normally after the Q&A there is a debriefing. So the juries will, discuss a little bit and say, hey, on this KPI, I didn't get it, and then they will input the feedback. They will fill it out, the feedback, and then normally, and this is something that I've seen in this edition, and I think it helps. We call back again the startup to the room, and then there is like a live feedback about 1-2 minutes, so you at least know what is the feedback about and what you need to start working on. Then we work on the feedback, we collect the feedback from the jury members, and then we send it to the coaches, and then the coaches take that feedback and then work with the startup throughout the next, let's say, period of phase. Because also we understand that after, doing the pitch, doing the Q&A, you cannot just go like this without knowing actually to feel a little bit where you stand. Am I okay? Am I yellow? Am I red on this KPI? So we always try to at least give a couple of minutes of live feedback, but then you will receive the real feedback, and that will be discussed with the coaches afterwards.
And perhaps one thing to add is that the jury gives you the feedback. The coaches are always in the room with the jury. So the coaches will always know more than you on the way you got those feedback. And this is important to leverage that. There is another important aspect to consider, is that we as coaches, but I cannot speak as we right now, so coaches in general can only help you if you open your book of information. There are startups that go to the coaches and share the very minimum, so the coaches are aware of the very minimum of what's happening in that startup, and it becomes a very academic exercise for us to try to see if you manage to go through the exercise of Fit for Start, and we do our best for you to be able to be ready. There are other startups that are really involving the coaches into everything. Like, we know the struggles, the challenges, the real issues, not just the fake public story. Because it's always fake for startups, the public story. The real story is what happens behind. So, well, it could be good or bad, but there is always a difference between what happens inside the office and outside the office, and what you communicate. And so my strong recommendation would be to whoever is or are your coaches, be incredibly talkative towards them. Give them every possible information, because sometimes they are capable of saying something to the jury, to the organizers, to other startups, to someone in the ecosystem that can actually open the right doors, move the right element for your startup. The more you give to the coaches and information, the more you end up being coachable. You are open to listen. You don't go in a confrontational approach against whoever is in front. It doesn't seem at all to be the case of you two on this channel right now. It may be the case for other startups. There are a lot of founders that enter and they're like, they're walls. Everything bounces off of them because they're not really interested in that information. And I mean,
if I can add there, Simone, it's we always select the best of the best coaches, like you can see here, Simone, right? And they are able to crack a little bit and unfold that real story, but it comes sometimes often too late.
Yeah.
And then there is no time to actually, recover and like, hey, yes, it's already 1 month to graduation, so sorry, too late. So that is also important to maybe mention here, that if you are really open since the get-go beginning, they're also your emotional support. I've seen that as well. And if you really go there like completely open and fully disclose and transparent since the very beginning, then chances are that then they will help you, and we all will help you as well. So
this is a super point, Isa, and it's important for all of the startups. Even if you choose not to disclose something, we are gonna find out. Like, we work for so many hours with you for so many months, for so many extra days. It is impossible to keep the lie, let's say, for long. So it is much better to be extremely collaborative on day 1 than on day 79. Because if it's day 79 and on day 82 there is the last TIRCO, we're going to drop the pen and say we cannot do much. too late. There's nothing we can fix because you would need to redo other KPIs. And so don't expect that you would be able to hide something from us. You're right, Isa. It never happened. Like we tried, some startups tried.
They try at the beginning,
none
and
of
then
them
we
managed.
always find out.
Yeah.
That's
None
true.
of them managed. It's too long, the collaboration, and too deep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And maybe one last point, and then because I think we are about to end, but if I can ask, because this is a little bit of an ask, and I'm all about collaboration and bringing people together. And you are 20 startups, and you are from Luxembourg. You know already what's happening here, but we also have some startups coming from abroad. They don't know anything about Luxembourg, and for me, also it's not only a chance of getting you the right network or getting you the money or getting you the experience, the knowledge. It's also about experiencing the same thing and creating that bond with your peers. And I always like to see how after the Fit for a Start, you create that bond and you identify yourself, and that's kind of like a community. So if you can bring along that sense of community and really create that group of Fit for a Started, that is always so lovely to see. And for instance, in the previous, or like in the previous edition, they even created a WhatsApp group. So I'm all the time saying, guys, please, you need to also onboard and integrate the startups that are not from Luxembourg for them to see what we can all do together. So that's also kind of like an ask that I always try to say to startups, like always integrate the expats or the people, the international startups to the Luxembourg ecosystem. And you will be the first, I would say, like the ones that they can trust, because they can see you, okay, the startups are already here for longer than me. So please also accompany them on the soft landing in Luxembourg. So yeah.
And on that point, because I am aware of time and we want to be respectful of everyone's time, thank you so much. One last closing point, and just building on that last part, for all of the startups, and obviously for you both, but everybody joining the program, you need to realize that you're not competing against each other, right? In the sense that if you're competing against anybody, you're competing against the person that you were, so that you can become a better person, so that you can become a better professional, right? A better startupper. And this is something that if everybody adopts this mentality of the only person I'm competing against myself so that I can become better, if you adopt that mentality, then you win, right? For sure. And the coaches absolutely are here to help. The jury members are here to help. Nobody's trying to trick you. Nobody's trying to, nobody's trying to make you fail. The only people that can fail are the ones that don't try. Okay? So thank you so much, one and all, for joining this evening. I'm going to have to have a conversation with Lux Innovation, because it's actually all been about Lux Innovation, really, in the end, hasn't it? So thank you once again all for joining. And for everyone listening, you're very welcome. Please do feel free to connect with these fine individuals. Their names are on the screens if you haven't found them and connected with them already. So I'm going to take the closing word. I'm going to say bye-bye to all of you, and thank you very, very much. And that brings us to the close. It's been slightly longer than usual. It's been a very, very interesting session. Of course, you'll find a huge amount of information out there on the web, and I know that the team from Lux Innovation is going to be receiving tons and tons of applications for next session, of course. So the coaches are going to be announced in the next few days. We don't know who they are yet. Who knows who's going to be coming up? Once again, congratulations to the startups that were selected. I'm obviously incredibly happy to have worked with you, Angelica, and Claude. Congratulations to all the others for being selected. And I am very much looking forward to seeing you in the next chapter. To you all in general, these Test My Pitch events are an opportunity for you to be able to come and try out your pitch. So you can, normally the format is 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes of pitch and up to 10 minutes of Q&A where you receive feedback about your pitch. If this is something that you would be interested in, please feel free to connect with me, Philip Grother, on LinkedIn. You will then receive a form so that you can apply, and it's a simple type form, a selection process for you to be able to go through. On that note, I'm going to wish you a very nice evening. I hope this has been informative, and I look forward to connecting with you all very soon. Until then, have a nice evening.